Welcome to our second feature show with Modular Podcast, this time with Andrew from Qubit again, and we're going to look at chance and possibly a little bit of Pulsar as well, but all things random. Let's quickly introduce everyone. We'll go down the usual Modular Podcast trio. Matthew, how's it going?
Yeah, not bad, thanks. Just come back from a holiday in Florence, so nothing really to report on the music front.
Since we were last on here, though, you've got an extra table of gear.
Yeah. So
overtaking the room.
Yeah, I've got a double Benjamin. It's my cups. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
Was one not noisy enough?
Yeah, what you've got is the interplay, because it's kind of got all modular breakout points, banana jacks. You can obviously cross-modulate each one of them. So, I mean, it was already kind of cross-modulated within one module, and you're kind of doubling it anyway. Yeah, it's great. Still just getting my head around that.
Like a feedback wrangler thing.
Yeah, you can have both of them together, and plus you can ring mod them together as well.
And Greg, how's it going?
I'm good, yeah. Since last we were on, I did a night's residency in the Dublin Science Gallery here. So they had the Moog System 55 over, so that was fun playing with that. It's quite limited, but in a way that was fun.
Yeah.
System. Plus you had all the Moog pedals going through, so I was playing a lot with those as well.
Oh, nice. Was that the rack of Mogafogas? Were they all kind of racked up?
Yeah. There was different chains of them, but they pretty much have every Mogafoga there is.
Nice.
Different configurations and different chains, so fun going through all that.
Yeah.
And we're on Space Echo as well, which was fun.
We should say at this point, you've got your synth meet for anyone that's listening around the time this goes up, 29th.
Yeah, that'll be the 29th, back in the Science Gallery again, starting from 12. We'll be there. And you were coming over for it, which shouldn't be news to you.
All free. Anyone that can get to the centre of Dublin. Good Guinness. Usual, all the token Irish stuff. And Andrew, how's it going?
Very well, thanks. Good to be back on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. We really enjoyed discussing Contour last time. And we delved into this as well. We do sidestep a little bit most of the time. So yeah, do you want to, I guess in your own words, introduce Chance? I'll pull up an image.
Sure, yeah. Well, so as the name suggests, it's a random voltage generator largely inspired by chance operations, which was spearheaded by John Cage in his musical work using indeterminacy and the E-King. And it's really what we wanted to do was we wanted to create a successor to the Nanorand that expanded on the original idea, sort of moved forward with what we had learned that we wanted to do differently, or just certain things we wanted to expand upon and give like simultaneous access to. Because we were a little limited with the Nanorand by the size, obviously. And so we wanted to break it out to a slightly larger footprint, get access to more things all at once. And also we wanted to create a random voltage generator that was a different take on it, that allowed for a little bit more unique ways of generating the random data and more unique ways of mapping it across useful parameters. And so this is really where the chance came out of, and it was just this expanding upon the Nanorand and trying to delve into John Cage's philosophy and aesthetic in the way that he used chance operations in random data in music. And so that was the idea, and it seems to have been, very well receptive, and a lot of people are kind of wrapping their heads around the ways that it's unique in relation to other random generators that they have.
Yeah, I guess there's 9 outputs on this thing. If we work our way through the types of random that this offers, so the second output at the top, discrete, is essentially a sample and hold. I presume that's what it is at the core, but stepped random voltages, a unique value per clock pulse. The smooth output, is that entirely timed to the internal clock?
It's related to it, although not entirely synced to it. So at each new clock pulse, it's going to choose a new value that's going to be its destination value, essentially, and it'll move towards that value in relation to your current clock rate. And then once it gets to that value, it'll keep moving. It won't just stop.
Yeah, so is it, the circuit may be different, but is this almost like having a really heavily slewed sample and hold, where it never reaches the value, but it changes direction and sort of bends to the next per clock?
That is exactly it, yeah.
Yeah. Then the wavetable output is something totally unique that I've definitely not seen on a random module. Can you explain what's going on the wavetable out?
Sure. So we have a multitude of unique wavetables that are stored in memory: sine, triangle, sawtooth, and then we have stepped versions of all of those wavetables. So as if you were to have run them through a sample and hold circuit, there's little discrete steps, but overall it's the same shape of the wavetable. And then what this output does is at each new clock pulse, it's going to choose not only a new wave shape to output, but it's going to choose a new frequency to run through that table. And what's really great about it actually is that the frequency is always a multiple or division of your clock rate. So no matter what, your wavetables sound like they're rhythmically in time with everything else that's happening.
Yeah, so the new rates are ×2, divide 2, freeze, fours. You never end up with a wavetable where the duty cycle feels out of sync in any way. And then we've got the blend output at the top, which I guess in simple terms, you could just blend between the others, right?
Yeah, exactly. The idea was, the blend output really is a continuation of what the nanorand had on it, which was you could cycle through all the algorithms on the nanorand, but you only had one at a time. And so what we wanted to be able to do, with the blend output, you get a distribution across multiple algorithms at once. So you can get somewhere between smooth and discrete, which is a unique, and it'll be unique each time you use it because you'll get these minute values that are never quite the same. You can never really dial it in exactly where it was before. So you find all these spaces in between the different algorithms that are really musically useful and really special, actually. You know, the strange places that you can get to with that instead of just the individual outputs on their own.
Yeah, and there's a coin toss on there. Again, your words are probably far better than mine for this. What's the coin toss doing?
Well, the coin toss is one of the bigger things that we took from Cage, which was when he was generating all of his random data to map to musical purposes, he was using the I Ching, which for those who don't know is this ancient Chinese text that is supposed to be used for divination, among other things. And the way it works is you go through a series of coin tosses, and the results of which help you determine this hexagram, which relates to a specific reading in the book. And so what I thought was so great about that is just this sort of instant generation of random data, and how cool would that be to be like used in a performance environment or just have a more immediate tactile nature within the modular. And so what we wanted was just a button right on there that just reseeds every output with new randomly chosen values. And that's exactly what it is. So you press coin toss, every output gets a new value that is randomly selected and starts outputting that as soon as you press it. Or you can obviously send it, if you clock it externally, then it will coin toss at each successive clock pulse as well. So it's just a global reseed for all, just reset the module, get all new random values, and keeps moving from there.
Yeah, if we keep working our way down, we have a freeze, which simply freezes the state of everything, regardless of internal or external clock. It's really nice and we've seen you develop these ideas with Pulsar, and there is an actual burst and rhythm output on this. But it's nice, I think, to look at those top 4 outputs as bursts of variable CV that you can freeze. So running it at a fast clock and then freezing it, square wave LFO that's maybe out of sync with the clock. So every now and then it kind of jerks and stops. It's almost like a fill generator, but for modulation as opposed to gates or triggers, which works really cool. Then down at the bottom, we've all the noise and rhythm bass stuff. How is the burst and the rhythm different?
The difference between the two is that the burst is a true random gate output. It's not mapped in any musical way. It's just random bursts of gates. So it'll, at each clock pulse, it's going to say, hey, flip a coin, 50% chance it's going to be on or off. And then it's going to, after that, do the same thing over a smaller amount of time. But it's really just going to be chaotic, aleatoric bursts of on or off voltage. Now, what the rhythm output is it does the same thing initially, where it chooses a random value or makes a coin toss, if you will, but it's then mapped to a musically significant or relevant, in this case, note value. So, for instance, it's going to be related to the internal clock at all times. So it's gate outputs that are going to be 8th notes, 16th notes, 32nd notes, etc., but they're randomly selected. And what it allows for is just algorithmic rhythms to be generated, as opposed to just purely out of time, in and out of time, random bursts of gates. So two variations of similar things, in my mind at least, but different end results entirely.
The rhythms are kind of the kind of trap 808 hi-hat that you hear a lot in modern productions are very good for that, randomly shifting between quantized rhythmic values. It's great for really choppy rhythms. And then there's white and digital noise. We'll get onto the patch examples we've done, but the digital noise, is that just varying the clock rate of the noise source?
Yeah, exactly. So that's just a pulse width modulation, a digital output on the microcontroller, on or off at random frequencies, which gets you that really harsh digital sound. And then the white noise is a pure analog circuit. It's the classic white noise that we have all come to love for hi-hats and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, every bit of random, certainly the three of us are big fans of the nanorand for things like that rhythm output, random gates that are derivatives of that tempo, that clock, be it for fills, or you tend to move sequences, Matthew, I think, more so than rhythmic events with stuff like that.
Yeah, and triggering envelopes as well. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the nanorand. I've been from a kind of like live case, again, just from the size and the feature set that's squeezed into that size. It's always in my live cases that. But yeah, certainly for pinging envelopes and stuff, I think it's brilliant for that.
I think it's really nice to just point that out, that you can use the rhythm output to trigger an envelope that's not in any way percussive, or reset your LFOs that are modulating your wavetable oscillators, or PWM, or filter cutoffs. And the white and the digital noise is cool as well. I'd use the digital noise as an FM source, so it keeps changing per clock pulse, rather than a just straight noise modulating everything. Let's get on some of the patches. We'll kick off with yours, Greg, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So your patch, Greg, plenty of qubit stuff. Obviously great for the show.
Yeah, this is, as you can probably see from the background, I'm in my girlfriend's house at the moment, and this is the case I brought round to annoy her with. She loves it.
Girlfriend Annoyer 5000.
Yeah, the idea behind this patch is I wanted to get some kind of arcadey type thrills coming with Pulsar arriving as well. With rhythm as well, you can get some kind of pulses and fills and stuff going, and you can get that from Chance as well. So with Chord there, wanted to get an arcadey type feel patch going. So I don't know if it sounds like that. So I got clouds in for some granular stuff as well, to kind of crush it a little bit more and make it a little bit dirtier. But I kind of patched Chance whatever I could. It's kind of it's feeding to a lot of different sources all at the same time, and Contour is chained as well with the rhythm trigger coming off into Chord. Yeah,
I think we've discussed it before, but I can see from the image that rather than taking the mix out of Chord, and a lot of users have done this and it always sounds really cool, they're actually splitting out chord voices into separate filters.
Yeah.
Rather than stacked blocked chords, you get chord voices in the terms of your musical arrangement. But
that's what's great about Chord. They're all harmonically related at any time. It's just, if you take 3 outputs or 4 outputs, at any time, they're always going to be harmonically related, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of good thing about it, and quantized for the most part. Yeah, so it's all being, this is all being clocked from rhythm. Chance has been clocked, and so it's pretty much the whole patch has been clocked from rhythm, and then some of it's feeding back, some of Chance is feeding back into rhythm to go back into the variation. It's going out to Pulsar and the bursts in certain parts. Some of it's going into the sequential switch, so some of it's off at certain points, some of it's on. I just tried to inject as much random from it as I could, and I didn't really touch any knobs from in this. It just played itself. I just hit record and sat back.
I'm just looking. We might have some users doing the same when they watch this, where they kind of head up to the screen looking through these patch cables. But it looks like using one of the rhythm outputs to freeze.
Yeah.
Hands. Yeah. Again, I think stuff like that's really cool. Like with you, Matthew, in terms of letting sequencers step with a random gate or a rhythm output, rather than think this says rhythm, so I'm going to patch it into a drum sound. Or and then as well, all the stuff from mixology, firing off, is it level, panning and sends?
Yeah, there's some panning going on there, and there's some sends as well. I've got the sends going out to a couple of Strymon pedals, the Dig and the Blue Sky. So that's kind of the delay. You hear the delay when it slows down and the clock slows.
It's a really great patch, really sort of organic, living.
Yeah, I think it's probably the first time I patched something and just sat back and let it play. I've kind of been hands-on with every other patch, turning knobs, but I think this is the first patch I've ever done where I've sat back and let it play. And there's quite a lot of variation when you listen to it. I mean, it's only a couple of minutes long, but it got quite a lot of variation out of it.
Yeah. Chance is almost like that random drunk friend. You're not quite, you rely on him, but you're not quite sure what he's going to do. So I think we've all done the same thing. I know, knowing how you patch, Matthew, you've probably done a similar thing where you stepped away from it. I certainly did with mine as well. Let's take a second and just get a preview of yours as well, Matthew. Okay, so bit of role reversal with you, Matthew. You're usually the super dense generative patch, a little bit simpler, but
it really is. It kind of didn't head that way, and I just thought, no, I want to sort of kind of let the module shine, as it were. And like I say, I'm a big fan of the Nanorand anyway, but I just really like how you've taken this module, and it's just a clear and distinct banding of the fact, just from a layout perspective, of that you've got all your kind of tonal random generation, for want of a better word, at the top, and all the rhythm based at the bottom, and it's just so simple but perfect. I mean, I've got lots of random modules, and this one is really fun to use.
Just thinking then, this sort of question I've been asked before: what's the most random module? Ignore my brain dump. It speaks for itself as a patch, though. To demonstrate Chance what we're here doing. I really like that you've got this dual layer going on as well. Not meaning to just sort of blow our own trumpets on this, but when you get a kind of voice module like rings or elements, or some of the full kind of synth voices like a Mother 32, people tend to see that output as definitive and forget that it's modular. Which it could be, because you strike it and the note will end when the decay time has passed. I like that you've added the Optomix as a kind of second layer of tonal and volume modulation.
Well, that's exactly what's happening there. And again, it's obviously it's a great marriage between these two with Rings and Chance. Rings is crying out to be modulated, and this gives it plenty of modulation. So that's what was kind of creating those kind of various changes in volume, etc.
Yeah. I guess you do a similar thing, Greg, by modulating the waveform on chord before going into a filter.
Yeah, so it's like a filter. It's additive rather than subtractive, but yeah, it's more or less a filter.
You add CV and it gets richer, but at times I think you get this really nice overlap where you might have taken the chord right back to a simple sine wave, so the filter's effectively doing nothing, but then when it's richer, the filter might drop back down, so it's still very sine-like in nature, but in a different kind of
And it's kind of good going into clouds with granular stuff like that, because you get sort of, it almost sounds bit crushed at certain parts.
That's what's quite good with things like that, is to feeding very simple chunks of data, as it were, because what that's going to then produce is something quite complex. So kind of, if you put loads of things in that are doing all sorts of stuff, it can end up being mush, really.
Yeah.
It's nice. I like stuff like that, where we're on a kind of effects tangent, where the effects have still got hold of something rich, but it's quite a low mix in terms of effects level. But what you're presenting now as a dry sound is quite pure and simple. Like if clouds had grabbed a load of pulses and saws, but you're at a point where the chord is now mainly sine wave. In nature.
What I did on my patch, effects-wise, sorry, just to put back in there, because I know that Greg mentioned he had a couple of pedals with it. All the effects basically on that are the avalanche run.
Right.
It's in reverse. So that's why you're getting this kind of like dragged kind of, sucking sort of the effect is coming back round.
I wasn't sure. We spoke about this, again, tangent onto reverse, but I find stuff like this really fascinating. I thought it might have been rings that was struck well, the low pass gate was down, and then that's come up as that's decayed.
Yeah, I thought it might be something like that.
Well, there is that kind of going on, but because that's reverse anyway, this is why you get these weird sort of, you feel like, and because obviously it's a delay and it's a reverse, you're getting this odd sucking sort of effect.
Yeah, it's nice for that. I have an avalanche run and I didn't even recognize it.
Right.
It's like we were discussing that having a volume pedal after a guitar is very different, because you have the transient strum of the guitar and then you fade it up. But to actually reverse a guitar flips where that transient point is. So although you might have a swell of guitar as the overall outcome, it's a really different sound. I didn't think it was that. I thought it was modular patch.
I didn't think so either.
Very nice. And we'll break off and check out mine as well. My patch seemingly ran away with itself, as people will see, but I'll guide you through sort of what Chance is doing, what the Pulsar's doing as well. But we'll start with sound sources. At the core, we've got 4 Mark 1 Dixie oscillators from IntelliGel. All triangle waves, just going into a quad VCA. And then I'm taking the 4 unique burst outputs from the Pulsar into Contour, firing off 4 envelopes and bringing them back again. Now, I've only just started scratching the surface with Pulsar, but it's a really basic 4-part 16-step sequence. I didn't think it could do it, to be honest, to start with. I was doing all this stuff firing bursts off, and I think I pressed the button, the top button on Pulsar, without really realizing. I thought, oh, right, I can actually go in and turn off and have 4 completely unique bursts that I tell it what to do. I thought this is really cool. So in a similar way to Greg's patching, taking what is effectively a 4-part chord voice and triggering them separately. Now, there's a lot of overlap and effects, so mine does give a kind of sense of a dense held chord a little bit more, but that's the sort of core of the patch. That's going into my mixer, which is just a basic little 4 HP mixer. I've got braids on the kind of wave folded bass, and just peaks giving me a really basic kick and hi-hat pushed right into the background. Pulsar's running quite slow, but then clock in Chance. And that's where it gets interesting. really. The herb verb's doing a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the effects. We've got the smooth, discrete, and wavetable going round between the herb verb and the DLD. I've got things like, well, look at the rhythm is coming out and triggering the WMD multimode envelope. Nothing special there, just a case of 4 envelopes have gone in contour, so just grabbed another one. And that's quite a slow attack on the envelope. So again, not rhythmic, even though triggered by a rhythmic trigger output. And that's just pulling up the dry wet on the herb verb. And the effects chain takes everything. Braids on bass, the chord voice, and the drums. That goes in mono to the herb verb, stereo off to the DLD, which creating these stereo looped textures, and then dimensions by audio damage, which is almost reverb-like. It's quite reflective if you get the depth and the rate just right. It's supposed to be a chorus, but you can get really nice reflective delay stuff. And everything's coming right off chance, really, other than those 4-part bursts from the Pulsar. The pitch is going into a quantizer, but that is coming from the... Can't see my own cable here. That is coming from the discrete output on chance. So stepping in time with everything else, that's just been... it's gone into the mixer inverter attenuator on the Happy Nerding module. I could have just attenuated on chance itself, which is great. It's the same as the outputs on Contour. That onboard attenuator is really useful. But I wanted a little offset as well, just to push the whole thing up into a positive range and then to attenuate. That's split in a mult, so the bass and the chords are following the same pattern. I've got my main clock, which was the Pulsar, going into chance, being split again, going into the DLD and the clock multiplier. The clock multiplier is shuffling around different rhythms, and the skipping of those beats, which is on that top 4MS clock multiplier expander, is the blend output. So as blend's being modulated, which you can see just on like a blank panel there, I made this sketcher patch, and on Modular Grid you can't edit the case itself once you've started making the patch.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm not doing this again. By the time it's literally just a triangle LFO, just scanning through that blend. So it's really simple. But I thought, I'm not starting this patch again. And from there, I just stood back. Because the clock on the Pulsar is quite slow to start with, these sort of plucked chords only come through every now and then, but then the modulated DLD and herb verb and the bass really just kind of work around as a texture underneath. It stayed up for a while as well as a patch. I tend to patch and pull fairly quickly just for video work, but this has been around for a few days. Got a lot of different content to come out of this, several videos. So yeah, that were my patch really. What I did, it's interesting, we've all kind of relied on effects fairly heavily. Well, I can't say for you, Matthew, because I couldn't tell what yours was doing, but I thought there was more of a verb of some kind going on.
Yeah, well, the Avalanche run is a reverb and delay.
Right, so you had the plate verb up as well as the reverse delay.
So that was there as well. But it was more, that's just a general bed for it to sit on, as it were. But it was more the effect that you're kind of hearing is the reverse. And again, we all seem to have chosen fairly slow tempos too, but it's great. I mean, I just think how you've got 3 quite distinct patches there, quite different from each other, but no sequencers, no nothing. I thought that's quite interesting how we've kind of not got a sequencer involved. You know, it's been using this for all the pictures, you know, and yeah, it works.
Like I say, it's like that friend you can rely on. You don't know quite what he's going to do, but you trust there's something good in him. he's gonna deliver, but you don't quite know maybe when, if it strikes a certain part of a modulated patch.
Well, yeah, I like to see it. It's almost like having another person in the studio that's improvising with you. You know, that you're over doing one particular section, and This is just there with you.
That's what it's good for. And you can use it way more subtly than we've all used it as well. I mean, we've all made an entire patch with chants at its core, but the way I normally use chants is a couple of layers within a track, not an entire patch made from it. But obviously this one's to show off chants and what it can do. But yeah, using it way more subtly is probably what I'd do with it. That and Pulsar, which actually make a really, really good combo together.
Yeah.
I think they really, really work well together. I've found that working with them for the last couple of days.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, like I said, just back to the actual ergonomics of the panel again, which I always think you tend to get really spot on, is the fact that there's lots of random modules out there where everything's kind of featured dense and quite packed in everywhere, where this has got, like I say, a really nice flow of they're all your kind of random pitches, those are your random rhythms, and you really immediately know where you are on the module.
And Ben already said it, but qubit modules in general with attenuators and everything is
it's great.
Cool.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on you saying how smooth it could be. It could be the most simple saw wave into a filter subtractive baseline that you've got going, but you could have say you're using a square wave, the smooth output could be doing some PWM on the oscillator, really heavily attenuated. The discrete output could be stepping the filter cutoff up and down as well as an envelope, so it just feels like it's alive a little bit. The wavetable may be mixed into the VCA so that you've an envelope opening up your amplitude, but again, it just kind of swells and pushes and pulls. And those attenuators make it really easy to do.
Yeah.
I've just been used a lot, and it just feels like this. Someone mentioned it in something earlier today on Facebook or Twitter about how a real drummer it isn't always a closed or an open hi-hat. You know, they vary it infinitely.
Yeah.
In terms of notated score, which I see a lot teaching drums, you have closed hi-hat, half open hi-hat has a symbol, and fully open hi-hat has a symbol. There is no in between other than a text thing that may say gradually open or something like that. But it's all those little things. You know, a drummer in a typical pop song might not go to an open hi-hat, but it might just slightly edge open towards the end of a phrase for a little bit of excitement. And I think this is really easy to put all that into a patch. All those subtle little movements that you don't really notice going on, they're just pushes and pulls. Well, it's kind of like a more extreme version of analog. How people say that analog is alive and its components vary and it's never quite stable. You can make anything just ever so slightly not stable. And to me, that's infinitely more interesting. So he's just going, right, this is going to be random, and just going bang with the cables, which is kind of what I did. Bit full on. But
well, interestingly as well, so the three of us have tended, to say that it's a random generator, as it were, and almost like your kind of classic Morton Sputnik type, really all over the place random pitch.
Yeah.
The three of us haven't actually done that, which is well, I don't know what it means. It just means about that, people maybe who are a bit unsure about a random module and think, oh, that's just that thing that goes do 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 do. No, it's not. You can rein it in. You can make it much tighter. Oh, you can. Oh, of course, you can have it expansive too.
Yeah.
A lot of the heavy lifting in mine is, and you can hear it's fairly musical as well. The text.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
But there's just a C, an F, and a G. They might not be tuned to that because it's just tuned by ear, but punched in the little keyboard quantizer. I'll pull the image up again. The little red ADAC module has a little keyboard interface for quantizing. There's only C, F, and G active. Maybe B flat. I remember I was putting that in and out at one point, but 3 or 4 notes tops, and it spans a couple of octaves. But it's just every now and then when the discrete value changes enough to reach the next note, we get another musical pitch, and it's all quite nice intervals. The bass line feels fairly musical, pinning it down. It's the reverb and the DLD that are doing the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
This kind of stereo loop time that feels like it's been pushed and pulled around a lot. I did mention the digital noise earlier. That's going into the linear FM for all 4 voices. So what you're getting is a really attenuated sort of FM that just adds a bit of hair and grit to the kind of chord tone. But
I'm gonna have to try it for that. That's something I've not tried.
But that itself is changing. It's great with white noise when you just want to patch a static noise into an oscillator and just make it sound. I had someone round that said it sounded vintage. You know, there's noise there, but it feels like it's part of what's going on, as opposed to just let's add some noise at the end of the chain. But because the digital one's moving, we're getting these sort of musical rhythmic changes in the FM as well. Let's talk a little bit about Pulsar, if that's all right. I guess origins for that, Andrew, just expanding on that rhythm idea from Chance.
Yeah, that's where we really kind of got our feet wet, so to speak, with experimenting with types of gate outputs and types of burst outputs specifically. And then we started looking around at burst generators in general, and they're really hard to find. They're so useful and so amazing as a piece of a modular system, and yet almost no one makes them, And so we thought, hey, we should really work on one of our own, give our own unique spin on it, and release this. It'll pair great with the Chance, and that's really where it all started. One day, actually, I happened to be I wound it up on the Wikipedia article for a Pulsar. I don't remember how I even got to it, but I remember reading the description and thinking, this is a burst generator in space. It was just like, it was a 1-for-1. Like, it just made perfect sense that they were just the perfect analogy. So that's where the name came from. And kind of just went from there. Yeah,
I remember I threw something up as a little news item when this came out, and it has an amazing write-up. It's just great. I touched on using it really basically as 4 different individual 16-step sequences. How are you using it, Greg, in your patch?
Mine is just sending random bursts out from one channel every once in a while through the switch.
Okay.
That's all mine's doing. It's not used too heavily in that patch. Thought if we ever came back to this one, I could do something else with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have used it as you described. You can use 4 different outputs and they'll all be rhythmically related. It's like it's a little bit like going on what I was saying with chord. The way they're harmonically related, you've got 4 outputs here and they're all rhythmically related. So yeah, it's really musical as well. I've really been enjoying Pulsar actually.
Yeah, clocking it as I had it set up regularly enough, it just becomes a 16-step 4-part sequencer that just keeps chugging over, which is great in that size. I don't know anything else that does 4 gate sequences in that HP, regardless of all the other stuff it does. I don't know anything that does it in that size.
But you're right there, Andrew. It's certainly about the market's completely dry in that respect, and it's one of those things. It's like, why aren't people making this? Because it's so incredibly musically useful. Just as random can be with pitch, this is just so useful.
Right. Once I started using it, it was really surprising to me how useful I found it, and how I feel like I can't patch without a burst generator now. And I never knew that ahead of time, obviously, and people don't talk about it a lot. So it's very surprising how musical they are.
This is, we mentioned in the Contour show, I know some people hate manual reading. There's a really good manual on the Qubit site that will answer lots of questions, give patch ideas, and just generally, I like reading manuals when modules are on their way. I like kind of looking at it the evening before, knowing something's in the post and getting some ideas. Can you walk us through the different modes, Andrew? We've got binary, random, fractal, Euclidean.
Sure. So the default mode is sequential mode, and this is where you can dial in a specific burst that you want. So the encoder just is a cursor, and you scroll around to whichever note you want to turn off or on, and that sets the pattern of that burst for whatever channel you're editing. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you can do that from the global page as well, and it will just globally turn all channels on or off for that specific step. So what I'm talking about is the ring of LEDs around the master encoder at the top. Mm-hmm. So that's the sequential mode. The Euclidean mode just applies, just like Euclidean sequencing, it's going to do its best to keep an even distribution over the course of your burst with the given number of bursts that you have. So in this mode, as you turn the main encoder, it's going to turn on more steps and distribute them evenly across your circle until the ring is completely full once you've turned it all the way to the right as far as it can go with an encoder. But once you go that many steps, then the ring will be completely full. And then as you go back down, it will travel evenly distributing according to its Euclidean algorithm all the way down to 0 pulses active.
Yeah.
Euclidean. And that's turned out to be surprisingly actually my favorite mode, which I didn't anticipate ahead of time. But it's very intrinsically musical. Just the patterns you get just on accident are just so useful and so appealing to me.
There's lots of Latin rhythms and kind of world music.
Yeah.
There's things used in gamelan as well that distribute odd numbers across even steps or even numbers across odd steps. And you'd be amazed how quickly you recognize these sort of clave rhythms or other kind of what you would associate with a world music percussion ensemble or something.
Right.
I think a clock divider and a Euclidean sequencer, and I'm pretty happy for rhythm. So yeah. We've then got the fractal and binary modes, which two I've not seen, or certainly not seen labeled as such anywhere.
Right. So the binary mode it's going to display a binary value in the ring of LEDs. It's going to, as you turn the master encoder, update that value in binary. And so you start at 0, nothing's lit. You go to 1, 1's lit, and then it's going to update incrementing across the ring, going up in binary as you move upwards. So it's going to wind up, your pulses are going to be more bunched together in small areas with binary, whereas Euclidean's the opposite. They're going to be spread apart.
Yeah.
And so that's the binary mode, which is very interesting. It's really interesting from a theoretical standpoint to me, sort of a philosophical viewpoint. It's just really interesting to see binary mapped out and then hear it affect your music.
Yeah, hearing binary is a kind of, I guess, an odd one, but interesting one. I guess more in a way like a burst of, I always pull things back to drums, or a lot of the time do, more like a short fill at the end of a sort of musical phrase, a burst in a more traditional sense of a dense burst, as opposed to sort of saying to the clave player, for 2 bars, play this Euclidean rhythm, or that's kind of what I've been getting out of it anyway.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's a really good observation.
And then what about fractal?
So fractal is, rather than being a pattern generation mode, it actually defines how all of the outputs interact together. And so once you're in the fractal distribution mode, what it's going to change is the order in which each burst is triggered and which ones play at a time. So instead of being simultaneously, it's going to randomly select between a group or a single one to fire off. So you're going to press burst, first channel is not going to go, but your third channel's pattern is going to play, so on and so forth, in a random fashion. And so we called that one fractal because it just seemed fitting.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. I'm flicking through the manual for anyone that's watching on YouTube. Well worth a read. Just for ideas of how to patch other things. That maybe isn't a great advert for, hey, we've got the producer of the module on the show, let's talk about his module. Okay. But all these things I find really educational for the rest of my system as well. I get a lot out of things like this, modules that push new ideas that are themselves very interesting, but also for everything else. And we needed to touch on Pulsar. I think we're going to get some questions about that one.
Yeah.
And we're going to be doing a set of tutorial videos for that module too. It seems like a lot of people would benefit from that since it's so deep.
Yeah, we should say as well, you guys have already put up some videos of the different modes, which is a really nice way to do it. Here's this mode and here's an interesting patch demoing that. Roughly when can we expect those videos for anyone looking to get one?
It'll be probably a couple weeks from now. The first ones will start coming out.
Cool. So for now with Chance and Pulsar, is this, for now at least, as far as you're going to explore this kind of random rhythmic and CV type idea as Qubit, or is there something else that you can or can't tell us about?
Well, in our minds, this is really the basis for your control signals in our sort of modular world, where you have the chance, which gives you all the CV that you would possibly want, the randomly generated CV, etc. And then the Pulsar fills out the remainder of the gate and rhythm sources that the Chance doesn't also have on it. And then from there, we're going to branch out into audio sources, and there's going to be some more randomness involved with some of those things as well, which won't go into too much detail, but we're going to be a lot of granular type stuff that utilizes random type operations and whatnot. And so we'll be incorporating that into our audio systems as well, and that will fill out the remainder of the our system, if you will, the qubit system.
Is that very much a development of the Nebula sampler?
It is 100%. We are very close working on the version 2 of the Nebula. So
oh wow,
you can expect that in the not so distant future.
Yeah, cool. I'm hesitant to push specific, is this coming as a module? Just ideas. It's nice to know what the kind of pathway someone's on, even if we don't know what the end result is going to be. Yeah, well, thanks for running everything down. One thing I should say with the 2 modules, again, any random source, but Chance is a perfect one for it. Triggering those bursts on the Pulsar is really nice from the discrete CV output. People kind of forget, I think, or it's certainly a question that comes up when I'm talking to people. A gate input simply just has a threshold for something to happen, whether that's the start of an envelope triggering and the input needs to see 1 volt before it does that, or whatever that is. And it's quite nice, even the smooth output, to just take something that's fluctuating into the Pulsar, and at some point that may drift at a point where it hits it, and then you get the pulses. Same for Chance as well, in terms of maybe the freeze input. Take the smooth out, play with the attenuverter. At some point that value might just freeze everything, which is cool, and you can play around with attenuverting and patching feedback on itself for those kind of ideas too. But yeah, cool. Anything else about Chance, Pulsar, random messages we need to sign off with?
Well, I would like to say that my favorite use I've ever seen of the Chance was Greg's first patch that he posted. And the patch starts and you hear this looping CV value.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, what is happening? What is going on? And then he just brings in the whole rest of the patch, and he had frozen the module, but it was still looping. It was the wavetable out, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not even entirely sure, but it really just blew my mind.
I think it was, yeah. It was just that freeze, and that was the entire modulation. And I was kind of looking for something. That was one of those patches where Ben always talks about this, where you're looking for inspiration. So I was looking for a modulation source, and I just let that run, and I let it run for a while, and I just kept hitting freeze randomly. Hit freeze, and that seemed to sound good at that point. So that's all that was. That was my very first patch. I was still learning the module at the time, but it's really, really brilliant for that, for somebody that writes stuff like I do.
I remember we were discussing that freeze button and the coin toss is almost just like, no, I don't like that. Freeze. No, give me another one. And it's almost just like, well, like I guess software that has a randomize all button. You hit it and go, no, not yet. And you just kind of keep going until something sits. I'll pull up Greg's Instagram. Rather than, we've all got stuff to promo, but there's a lot of really good qubit patches on Greg's Instagram page as Phlegosaurus_Rex. It was this patch, I believe, looking at the pink Lamon design case. I won't try and play it, as Google Hangout tends to not like stuff like this, but yeah, well worth checking those patches out on there as well. Cool. We've plenty of interviews and things coming, back to the normal episodes, looking at specific modular functions in a more kind of tutorial style. Some more features on modules to come over summer. Modular meets Leeds, we should mention. A big event on the 19th and 20th of August. Greg's event on the 29th of July. That's probably it for summer. Anything from you, Matthew?
No, I was just going to say, let's not forget modular meets. For us, 2 days this time.
Yeah, so the event, we'll do a little plug for the event, why not? Very much as we did last year, we've got performances, new products, manufacturers, community stuff, just general users all together in a nice big room. It's a really nice atmosphere, having users there next to a manufacturer, as opposed to just a trade show that's just a line of everyone that either is a designer or manufacturer. We've got Chris Carter from Throbbing Gristle playing. I've got a new product from Future Sound Systems to come. There may be some association there. Some new stuff from Erica Synths as well. A couple of EU guys, some of the UK guys there. Huge, ridiculous raffle. Really kind people give us stuff to give away, which is ace, and all profit goes to charity. Just a big community event. And on the Sunday, we're going to have some more focused presentations. Take away the kind of hustle and liveliness of the Saturday and just all focus on a product presentation, as well as a live free module challenge. I should say I'm going to use chance in mine as well. So it's a good point to bring up.
Yeah, me too.
So we'll all use chance for that. Yeah, live free module challenge with the idea that, you know, pubs have rock bands doing jam nights, turn up and play a AC/DC song of choice or whatever that particular audience is into. We thought, why not have a free module challenge? That's just a nice way to finish off on a Sunday afternoon. So Chance is going to do the heavy lifting for me in that.
Okay.
And then maybe Rings and a DLD, or I don't know. But you need that random friend.
Oh, yeah.
We've got free modules. So yeah, cool. Right, brilliant. Well, thanks for running us down all the info. Anyone's got any questions, let us know. Links and things are in the description. Yeah, cheers.
Cheers, Andrew.
See you guys.
Yeah,
Thank you. Bye.